Well, now let's take a look at the rest of today's news. It's certainly been a very busy week. For more on this, let's bring in broadcaster Craig Foster and New South Wales One Nation Leader Tania Mihailuk. Hi to you both.
Hi,
Thank
guys.
you very much for joining us this evening. Now, look, let's start with the situation in Bondi, because today the Bondi community took a step in trying to return to some kind of normality following Saturday's massacre. Westfield Bondi Junction reopened this morning for trade for the first time since 6 people were killed. Craig, I mean, look, it's been a really shocking week in Sydney, hasn't it? And tomorrow, of course, marks 1 week since the deadly attacks at Bondi. It feels a bit like life has changed, and for many it will be very hard to return to normal.
Yeah, look, it's worrying times, with what's happening abroad and what we've seen in the last week. The Bondi Junction Centre is, we live and play, and our kids are all there very regularly, and so many of our friends and people in the eastern suburbs, knew people who were there. In fact, my girlfriend's partner was locked in one of the shops throughout, and so my heart goes out and all my love to the families who were involved, and of course all of those tragic stories that everyone has been across this week, and it must have been such an incredibly difficult week. One thing I've got to say is I have been inspired by how many Australians have come together, through these, and Australians do that best in times of crises. And everyone out, today, as you say, are coming together to commemorate the events, but also, pledge our commitment to each other and to the values of Australia and across all of our communities as well, which is really important. And two, from my perspective, the concept of multiculturalism itself, and the fact that, our beautiful diversity that we have in this country, we have to protect it, and we cannot allow, in these times, what we have seen, systematic and really dangerous attempts to divide Australians, and I think Aussies, everyday Aussies like us, have resisted that, and that's been wonderful to see the past week. One of the big takeouts, I think, and politicians are starting to talk about it, importantly, is around social media, and we've talked about this numerous times in recent weeks, and I think prior to, but particularly during and immediately post these attacks, these heinous attacks, we saw shocking, divisive, disgraceful, disgusting attempts to leverage horror and tragedy for political or ideological purposes. And it's a really, really serious issue in Australia that we need to get hold of. And I'm at least pleased that in the last couple of days, Australians have turned our mind to that.
Look, I think in these sorts of events, Tania, it shows the best and the worst of humanity, and we certainly draw inspiration from the heroes of the Bondi story and for those who actually really risked their lives to save so many people.
Yeah, look, we saw some amazing people come forward, not only the police and, of course, the paramedics and the emergency personnel, but also just shopkeepers and shoppers, stepping in to help victims and to aid victims and to help people, keep people in their shops safe. And, I mean, it was amazing what sort of help Australians gave to each other last weekend. But it's also, I think, Danica, a really important reminder that people, you saw the New South Wales government, in fairness, actually react quite well last weekend. We saw the Premier come back from holiday, which I think was critical and a credit to him for doing so.
Yeah, great.
And it was important that the government all come together, whether it be the police, the health, all the different, institutions in New South Wales came together to assist the victims and to assist the families and everybody grieving. It's also a good reminder of how important it is to focus on the basics. And you want government focusing on the basics. And it's an important opportunity now for this government to actually review the mental health services that are not provided in New South Wales, I should say, because it's been outsourced for a long time, mental health in New South Wales. It's all privatised, costs you something in the order of $300 an hour just to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist.
Which is just that's extraordinary. That's a huge
and that needs to be reviewed.
This is why people are falling through the cracks.
Absolutely. People are falling through the cracks.
On the weekend.
And the government needs to step in now and actually have a good review of those type of services, I think, moving forward.
I think it's brilliant. really brought that into the forefront.
It really
has been a more broader conversation about mental health this week.
And people want that, not focusing on the pet projects, but actually
people actually want proper projects.
Sure.
Now, look, let's move on, because public hospitals are on life support as performance drops to its lowest level ever. Planned surgery wait times are the longest on record, while emergency departments are failing to treat on time as many as 1 in 3 people with life-threatening conditions. Craig, that is a big worry. What's going on here?
Well, one of the things we expect as Australians, for our service, for our taxes, for our working lives, is decent, timely health services. And that, to make sure that Medicare and other services that we have are broad enough so that Australians can can access timely and cost-effective health services that they need. And you talked about mental health, an incredibly important one. So it's clear that hasn't been happening, and this is one of many issues we've discussed here over the last month. Right? We talked about the road tolls, which I'm certainly not a fan of. I think it's ridiculous in a resource-rich country that we're paying for that. And this is another red flag to say, all Australians saying, OK, this needs to be solved. But in order to do so, we have to go to the root causes, and we have to look at where the taxpayer funds go and look at the allocation of taxpayer funds. And so I think it's time to have that conversation.
Well, I've got to say, Craig, you've also got to look at what's transpired in the last 12 to 18 months. Why is there so much more pressure on public hospitals? Well, I can tell you why. It's because 73% increase in the number of people arriving into Australia, from 437,000 to 727,000 in a matter of months, in 12 months last year. The pressure of migration will put extra pressure on hospitals. There's no question of that. Can I just say, these wait lists were actually under control after COVID. All data that you saw around Australia essentially show that there was that it stabilised, the waiting lists and so forth, and the type of services and surgeries coming out of emergency and indeed elective surgery. It's actually skyrocketed now, the waiting lists, and you're seeing the worst. It's the worst numbers in 20 years now, because of the number of people that have come into Australia in the last 12 to 18 months.
Well, there was another record in February. It's gone up by 20%.
And it's gone up again. So, and when you've got those type of numbers, a net gain of something in the order of 520,000 people in a matter of 12 months, of course there's going to be pressure on the health system. As there is already on housing, we know that.
Of course,
and it doesn't surprise me that there's now additional pressure on the hospital system.
Well, let's be careful. We don't blame everything on migrants and continue to do so. Because last year,
those numbers are large, Craig. Those numbers are large.
I don't have the breakdown, but I take your point. I take your point. But I do think that we are pointing the finger at migrants a lot without looking at the underlying issues. And I saw a piece today about the New South Wales Health Minister already onto this last year or the year before, that there was something like 14,000 people on the wait list. That's down to 2,000.
But it's up again. That's the point, Craig. It was under control for some period there, and it's back up again.
I'm sure there's a number of factors, and that is likely one.
Well, I think those numbers are very high. And
I mean, it's certainly been a bit of debate that's raised its head up again. But look, I want to get to this next story, because a Brisbane state school is under fire for converting one of its female-only bathrooms to a gender-neutral bathroom without consulting parents first. Now, some parents are insisting their daughters are too afraid to go to those bathrooms, reporting male students are urinating on the seats and in the sanitary bins, or otherwise loitering around. Tania, this is appalling.
Yep, it certainly is. Look, why can't we just focus on actually providing young kids at school a safe place? Not shared place.
No.
Okay? It's not about shared places, it's actually about safe places. 12-year-olds are in Year 7, so you've got 12-year-old girls who are navigating through the challenges of puberty. And rightly should have access to their own bathrooms. Okay, this is outrageous. The idea that the Queensland Human Rights Commission essentially decided that every school in Queensland has to divvy up a certain number of unisex toilets, and they know that already there probably isn't sufficient toilets available for these kids. It's appalling. It's essentially putting through this social sort of virtue signalling, pushing this agenda on kids. Let kids be kids.
Correct.
I can understand why parents are outraged.
Yeah.
These, kids and indeed boys should be able to navigate the challenges of puberty by going to their own bathroom, not being subject to that type of intimidation, to these sorts of issues.
Well, Craig, where do you sit on this? What do you think?
So are you suggesting that there are toilets, and what the Human Rights Commission has said is that a small portion of them have to be what they call gender neutral? Is that what you're saying? Or?
Well, I think that
Or are you saying all of them have been turned across?
Well, no, there's a certain proportion that every school has to provide, okay? Now, I don't know if every school is even able to provide that, but it does mean that girls will probably lose access to their toilets as a result, Craig, let's be honest.
How do you feel about that, Craig?
My position is similar to Tania in that the safety and well-being of the kids is paramount. And I think you sometimes have to make decisions at a high level, and it's not necessary to always, sort of kind of deal with the parents as well, because there's a broad range of views. But the safety of the kids comes first. That's all there is to it.
In any environment, it's always a safety of kids.
Totally.
We need to respect that.
They can provide staff toilets. There's other solutions.
There's other solutions. Look, we've run out of time. It's been a huge week.
Already.
We started having fun. I'm sorry.
It was a bit of a sad week this week.
It has been a sad week, but good to have you both on regardless. Craig Foster, Tania Mihailuk, good to see you both. Thank you for joining us.